Nick Carraway, a Yale graduate and World War I veteran, finds himself in a sanatorium battling alcoholism. He reflects on a man named Gatsby, whom he regards as the most hopeful person he ever encountered. Struggling to articulate his thoughts, his doctor, Walter Perkins, suggests that he write down his experiences, as writing has always been Nick's passion. In the summer of 1922, Nick moves from the Midwest to New York, abandoning his dreams of being a writer and instead taking a job as a bond salesman. He rents a modest house in West Egg, a village on Long Island located next to the grandiose mansion of Jay Gatsby, a mysterious and wealthy man who frequently hosts extravagant parties. Not long after settling in, Nick visits his cousin Daisy Buchanan and her husband Tom in East Egg, a more refined and affluent community across the bay. During dinner at the Buchanans' home, Nick is introduced to Jordan Baker, a cynical and glamorous golfer with whom Daisy wishes to pair him. Jordan informs Nick that Tom has a mistress who resides in the Valley of Ashes, an industrial wasteland lying between West Egg and New York City. A few days later, Tom invites Nick to accompany him on a visit to this desolate area, where they stop at a garage owned by George Wilson and his wife Myrtle, who is indeed Tom's lover. Tom, Myrtle, and Nick travel to an apartment in the city where Tom and Myrtle conduct their affair. The group hosts a rather vulgar and unsettling party which ends in violence when Tom strikes Myrtle in the face for daring to mention Daisy's name. As the summer progresses, Nick receives an invitation to one of Gatsby's legendary parties, which is a rare honor as few guests ever receive formal invitations. Upon arrival, Nick is struck by the grandeur of the event, though he soon realizes that none of the attendees seem to know Gatsby personally, despite the abundance of rumors surrounding him. Theories about Gatsby's past are varied and wild, ranging from him being a German spy to a prince or even an assassin. While at the party, Nick encounters Jordan Baker, and together they eventually meet Gatsby himself. Surprisingly, Gatsby is a young, enigmatic man who appears aloof yet kind. Before the night ends, Gatsby's butler informs Jordan that Gatsby wishes to speak with her privately. Gatsby begins to develop a friendship with Nick, inviting him on various outings and sharing pieces of his life story. One day, Gatsby takes Nick to lunch with his associate, Meyer Wolfsheim, a gambler known for having fixed the 1919 World Series. During this lunch, Gatsby claims to have come from a wealthy family who has since passed away. However, when Tom Buchanan unexpectedly arrives at the same restaurant, Gatsby appears visibly uncomfortable. It is clear that there is tension between them, though the reason remains unclear to Nick at that moment. Through Jordan, Nick learns that Gatsby and Daisy had a romantic relationship in 1917 before Daisy married Tom. Gatsby, still deeply in love with Daisy, has been throwing his opulent parties in the hope that she might one day attend one and rekindle their romance. Every night he gazes longingly at the green light across the bay, which marks the end of Daisy's dock. Gatsby asks Nick to arrange a meeting with Daisy, and Nick obliges by inviting her to tea at his house without revealing that Gatsby will also be there. The reunion between Gatsby and Daisy is initially awkward, but soon they fall back into their old familiarity, beginning an affair. Gatsby is disheartened to discover that Daisy wants to flee New York with him, rather than live in his mansion as he had envisioned. Despite Nick's warning that the past cannot be repeated, Gatsby remains adamant that it can, dismissing Nick's advice. In an effort to keep the affair a secret, Gatsby dismisses most of his servants and ceases his extravagant parties. Gatsby eventually persuades Nick and Jordan to join him in confronting Tom at the Buchanan's home, intending to announce that Daisy is leaving Tom for him. Nick is reluctant but agrees after Gatsby insists. During the luncheon, Tom grows increasingly suspicious of Gatsby's intentions as he notices Gatsby's intense focus on Daisy. When Gatsby finally declares his love for Daisy, Tom challenges him, accusing Gatsby of illegal activities such as bootlegging, which he claims is the source of Gatsby's wealth. The tension reaches its peak when Daisy suggests they all drive into town. Tom, now confident that he has exposed Gatsby as a fraud, insists on driving Gatsby's car with Nick and Jordan, while Gatsby and Daisy take Tom's car. The group stops at George Wilson's garage, where Tom learns that George plans to move west with his wife Myrtle to escape their toxic situation. Tom is visibly disturbed by this news, but the group continues on to the Plaza Hotel. At the Plaza, Gatsby and Tom continue their heated exchange, with Gatsby insisting that Daisy never loved Tom and only married him because Gatsby was too poor at the time to provide for her. Daisy, overwhelmed by the confrontation, eventually admits that while she did love Gatsby once, she also loved Tom at the same time. This admission devastates Gatsby, who had idealized their relationship. Tom, now feeling triumphant, sends Daisy back home with Gatsby, confident that their relationship is irreparably damaged. On the drive back to East Egg, tragedy strikes. Myrtle Wilson, having escaped from her husband and believing that Tom is driving the car, rushes into the street to flag him down. She is struck and killed by Gatsby's yellow car, which Daisy is driving. In a panic, Gatsby decides to take the blame for the accident to protect Daisy. Back at the Buchanan's mansion, Nick encounters Gatsby, who reveals that Daisy was behind the wheel when Myrtle was killed, but he plans to take the blame regardless. Gatsby remains hopeful that Daisy will call him the next day, convinced that they can still be together. George, devastated by his wife's death and misled by Tom's information, tracks Gatsby down to his mansion. While Gatsby is waiting for a call from Daisy, he goes for a swim in his pool, a luxury he has never actually enjoyed before. George arrives and shoots Gatsby, killing him instantly before turning the gun on himself. Nick, shocked by Gatsby's sudden death, tries to arrange a funeral but is dismayed to find that none of Gatsby's supposed friends or partygoers are willing to attend. He reaches out to Daisy, only to discover that she and Tom have left New York without leaving any forwarding information. After Gatsby's death, Nick becomes increasingly disillusioned with life in New York. He ends his relationship with Jordan Baker and decides to return to the Midwest. Before leaving, he reflects on the moral decay and carelessness of the people around him, particularly Tom and Daisy, who he believes are responsible for Gatsby's downfall. Nick concludes his memoir by standing on Gatsby's deserted dock, gazing out at the green light that once symbolized Gatsby's hopes and dreams. He recognizes that Gatsby's unrelenting pursuit of an idealized past was ultimately his undoing. Back at the sanatorium, Nick titles his manuscript Gatsby, but before finalizing it, he revises the title to The Great Gatsby, a fitting tribute to the man who, despite his flaws, remained a symbol of the American dream.